So about a week ago, I did a video on the Kentucky bourbon industry comparing it to Canada's liquor industry. The difference is huge. Kentucky industry is on life support, and Canada is thriving. Since then, some of you have sent me some follow-up reports to review. So today, I'm going to do a second part for the Kentucky bourbon industry. It's also a reminder of what happens when you vote someone who doesn't care about your local economy. Today's backdrop comes from Larry, one of our viewers. He sent me this awesome photo of Lake Louise in Alberta. It's actually the same vantage point as one of my mom's photos, but this one being in the spring or summer. Thanks for sending it in, Larry, and giving us the comparison. Before we start, just a public service announcement. Please double check the channel name when you're clicking on my videos, and make sure it's actually really my channel. All right, let's get into it.
Did you hear about this? A perfect storm just crushed Kentucky's $9 billion whiskey industry. Here's what's going on. In the last 8 months, 3 major distilleries filed for bankruptcy. 23,000 jobs gone. Why? Well, first, Gen Z. They're not drinking as much as they used to. They prefer weed over whiskey. Second, the European nation slapped massive tariffs on U.S. whiskey. At the same time, producers flooded the market betting that a boom would last forever, but it didn't. It tanked. In Canada, that was the final nail in the coffin. They hit U.S. whiskey with a 25% tariff, then pulled it off their shelves completely in retaliation against Trump's trade war. Now we have a 200-year-old American tradition that is circling the drain. What do you think? Can U.S. whiskey be saved? And if so, how? Drop your thoughts and hit the follow button to stay in the loop.
So if you're on TikTok, I recommend checking out Kevin Gen X's page. He's got some great videos and regular updates on what's happening down south. Now to answer his question from a Canadian perspective, can your 200-year-old American whiskey tradition be saved? Speaking for myself, I used to buy American whiskey, not that much. I don't really drink too much. That's not happening anymore, even if Trump was out of the office. Why? Yes, Trump is the face and the voice making these radical decisions right now. But the bigger problem is the people who voted him in and the ones who didn't even bother to vote at all. So as one of Kentucky's former customers, you'll never get my money again. And let's not forget who Kentucky voted for. Now, moving on to the next TikTok creator. I featured her a few times. Give her a follow as well. She really drives home just how bad the situation is in Kentucky right now, and makes it clear that Kentucky is going through its own FAFO moment.
All right. I got a $9 billion FAFO, a $9 billion FAFO for the state of Kentucky. Come on forward, everyone. Listen to this. Yes, Kentucky is a red state. Yes, Kentucky voted for Donald Trump. This is a $9 billion FAFO. Look at this distillery in Kentucky. That is a huge GDP of Kentucky. $9 billion. They have filed for bankruptcy. $9 billion. The red state of Kentucky, this is an FAFO. Do you remember when the tariffs hit? We told Canada we don't need you, and people stopped buying whiskey from the United States. This is a $9 billion FAFO for the red state of Kentucky. Do you know what kind of devastation that brings to a state like that? They're already a red state, low in education. This is going to be a tough FAFO for Kentucky. A $9 billion bankrupt whiskey distillery company is going to lead to a lot of job losses. Kentucky getting exactly what they voted for? FAFO? I think so.
I'm not sure if you caught it, but she said FAFO. Okay, it was a little bit too much for me, but you get the point. What I want to emphasize is why I have zero sympathy for the Kentucky bourbon industry. It's simple. They're a red state, and it's very likely that many in the industry voted for this outcome. They voted for Donald Trump. They voted for the guy who said they don't need anything from Canada. They voted for the guy who slapped unnecessary tariffs on countries all around the world. In Canada, along with others, we're not just going to sit back and take it. We pulled your alcohol off the shelves, and if it's still on the shelves, we're not buying it. I didn't realize bourbon was a $9 billion industry. It's a lot of money for Kentucky. especially when bourbon is their biggest industry. It's going to be hurting them. Now, this next one was a last-minute addition sent by one of our community members named Dwayne. He sent it over after I already finished rendering this video, but I knew this one needed to be included. Why? Because it shows exactly what's happening right now in Kentucky. Liquor stock is just sitting on storage with no home. Let's take a look.
If you hate tyrannical tariffs, if you like money and you love whiskey, then you're going to hate this. Take a listen.
We have pallets of product that was bottled and designated for Canada that are sitting in our warehouse.
Heath Clark says about 25,000 bottles of his whiskey are collecting dust in the warehouse. Back in March, Canadian provinces retaliated against President Trump's 25% tariffs by pulling American liquor off its shelves. Clark's whiskey was one of them.
And in those cases, you've got product that's now homeless.
New data shows the Canadian liquor boycott cost the country about $500 million in revenue. Total liquor sales fell by more than 12%.
It's a terrible word, but it's a little bit boneheaded. They've lost $500 million in revenue.
The distilled spirits.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here for a minute. 25,000 bottles just sitting there. That's a lot of whiskey that was supposed to end up in Canada. Now this guy, he calls it boneheaded, but I'm not sure where he's aiming that at. Is he blaming Canada for pulling the liquor off the shelves? Or is he pointing the finger at his own government? Let's see what else he has to say.
Council of the United States has been working with their Canadian counterparts, trying to convince leaders that when it comes to a possible trade war, they should leave liquor out of it.
This industry should be immune to that. Why? Because we bring people together.
Okay, this guy's an idiot. Alcohol doesn't bring people together. If anything, it ruins lives. We all know somebody, family, friend, coworker, neighbor, who turns into a completely different person when they drink. That's not unity. To me, this guy's only in it for himself. And by that, I mean the money. And that boneheaded comment that he made, I'm betting it was aimed at Canada. What do you think? Let me know in the comments who you think his boneheaded comment was directed to.
Thank you.
On Sunday, President Trump announced a 15% tariff on most imports from the European Union instead of the 30% he threatened earlier this year. But it's still not clear how the agreement will impact alcohol. American distillers hope it's a step toward eliminating all tariffs in the spirits industry. Meanwhile, farmers who provide grain to distillers also want some consistency when it comes to trade policy.
We can't turn our spigot on and off with grain supply.
Did you catch the part where the reporter said they hope it's a step forward to removing tariffs, but only in the distillery industry? Why just that? What about the steel? What about the wood and manufacturing or produce industries? To me, it's simple. They only care about themselves. My industry is hurting, so take the tariffs off. But everything else? If it doesn't affect me, I don't care. That's what this guy is telling me. And to the Kentucky liquor official, your industry isn't special, so why should you be immune? If you agree with me on my assessment, drop your thoughts in the comments. And thanks again, Dwayne, for sending this over. It was a real eye-opener on how these US officials see Canada and the whole situation. Which brings me to the next report from a local Kentucky news station. Let's check it out.
At a bad time where domestic demand is kind of slipping as well, and so there's not an outlet for all this whiskey to go.
Well, here at 5, trouble for Kentucky's bourbon industry. Well-known brands in our state are reporting declines in bourbon sales, and distilleries tell us the challenges go beyond the tariffs. Isaiah Kim Martinez joins us now. He continues to report on these latest struggles for Kentucky's signature industry. And Isaiah, it seems like we keep hearing problems for the bourbon industry right now.
Well, Connie, and the list just keeps on going. Add a couple more financial reports here. Get this. So far this summer, Brown-Forman, Wild Turkey, and this week, Bullet Distillery, they're based, of course, in Shelbyville, all reporting drops in bourbon sales. And experts tell us it's time now for these companies to get creative.
Now, I've never heard of any of these companies, and I don't know what brands they produce. But the way he's reading them out, it sounds like they're starting to drop like flies. Maybe this really is the beginning of the end of a 200-year-old American tradition.
We've seen Bullet Bourbon report sales down 7.3%. Wild Turkey, I believe, 8%. I mean, that's bad news, is it not?
It is. I mean, it is concerning.
Ryan Cecil is the master blender for Louisville distillery Pursuit Spirits, which has done well as a very small niche boutique brand.
We're up 50% 5% this year over last year.
They're based in Butchertown.
Put this in there.
But have expanded their tasting experience to downtown Louisville.
We've been insulated from kind of all the tariffs. We're here only domestically.
But some of the bigger companies, including Louisville-based Brown-Forman, are not as bullish on the bourbon market, as many of them report significant declines in sales.
While people used to say, okay, Bulleit's my brand, Wild Turkey's my brand, or Jim Beam's my brand, and they would buy that exclusively, you kind of see the new drinker kind of being more curious and want to explore different expressions from different distilleries, not just in Kentucky, but also across the U.S.
Now, back when I was young and dumb and partied a little bit too hard, my friends and I would always buy Jim Beam because it was cheap. Now, when this guy says people are looking for other brands and alcohol outside of Kentucky, but still within the U.S., it's a very localized way of thinking. It tells me he's not thinking beyond his own borders. Because for everyone else, the rest of the world, we're not looking for alcohol in other parts of the US. We're looking for alcohol outside of your country entirely. For me, I have a bottle of Lagavulin 16 on my shelf, and I'll be happy to support Scotland and any other country before I buy another US bottle.
Cecil, who's also the co-founder of the Bourbon Pursuit podcast, says companies have a glut of supply with nowhere for it to go coming out of the COVID boom. Domestic demand has slipped, and distilleries tell us exporting internationally has become more difficult with President Trump's tariffs.
It's very capital intensive to make whiskey and sit on it for 6 years, and then when you had a plan to go ship it overseas and that plan is no longer available, and then you still have bills and debt to pay and all the financial burdens that come with that. That's a recipe for, tough times for the industry.
I asked Governor Andy Beshear about the latest dip in sales.
Bourbon might have had some corrections that were going to happen with supply, but when you see what's happening in Canada and the EU and other places, we know it's the tariffs.
Cecil.
Well, tariffs is one thing. Yes, they did start the drastic change in Canada that led to your products being pulled off the shelves. But what's being overlooked is the disrespect towards Canada with your president's 51st state rhetoric. I'd bet good money that even if the tariffs were lifted on both sides of the border, and Kentucky had no more excuses, your sales in Canada would never reach what they were at the peak. Why? Because it's Canadians and international consumers who are angry, and we're the ones that used to fill your bank accounts. Governor Beshear is a Democrat, and supposedly one of the good guys. So why are you afraid to speak up for the real reason of why this is happening?
Tells me distilleries now need to get creative with their barrels.
RTDs are very popular, which are ready-to-drink cocktails. So you see a lot of spirits companies putting their whiskey into canned cocktails to compete with like the vodka seltzers or the malt seltzers that are very popular now.
All right, so Isaiah, I'm just curious. We were talking about Bulleit and then Wild Turkey. How about other brands out there like Woodford, all the other brands?
Yeah,
are they hurting?
It's interesting, Connie. It's sort of, there's a discrepancy, right? The really sort of expensive top shelf brands are still doing relatively well because the people that have a lot of money who are buying that still are.
I'm going to quickly pause it here because he actually made a good point. He says that there are a lot of people with money that are still buying. But what percentage of Americans right now, the average American, actually have the disposable income to buy the alcohol? With grocery prices climbing, gas going up, and Donald making everything more expensive for the US citizens, depending on the wealthy Americans doesn't sound like a sustainable replacement for international sales.
Okay. It's sort of those more affordable, those $15, $20 bottles that during sort of the stay-at-home season of 2020, a lot of just everyday folks were buying that because there was just not a lot else to do, right? And that has really scaled back sort of the lower shelf. So we're seeing sort of that's the discrepancy between some of the more expensive $150, $200 bottles versus the everyday ones that you and I might see.
Makes sense. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Isaiah.
Is it me, or does it feel like they're trying to patch up a much bigger issue with a quick little Band-Aid? Instead of addressing the real problem, causing their entire mess, we're hearing local news reporters throwing out random excuses for the downturn or suggest solutions that completely avoid the actual cause. It's starting to almost feel comedic, like they can't say it, or maybe they're not allowed to say what the actual issue is. At the end of the day, whatever. It's not my state or country that's suffering. They'll keep blaming everyone else, except the root cause. So what's my takeaway from this escalating situation in Kentucky? Number 1, they're in denial. Number 2, this is a state that has been red for 8 straight elections, and this could be the year that sinks the 200-year-old American tradition. Number 3, we Canadians and our international allies are making a difference. If anyone ever tells you the boycott, whether product or tourism, isn't making an impact, you can sit back and ignore them. Because if they're saying that, they're in denial as well. Continue the boycott, continue supporting our allies, and don't let your foot off the gas. If you found this video helpful, hit the like and subscribe button to help this message get out to more people. And also share it with your friends as well. If you're still here and you want to check out the other videos that I create, check the other videos that are showing up on your screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.